Full disclosure, Athlon sent this Rangecraft chronograph in for me to test and review. So there's that out of the way. These are supposed to be $3.99, and that's actually what they're showing like on most websites right now. I'm sure as these flood the market, the price will come down, and that puts it pretty competitively priced against this thing's biggest rival, which is the Garmin Xero. All of your product information is here on the back, and the cardboard box is, well, pretty decent. It's got a lot of good illustrations on it, and it houses the soft, hardish case pretty well. Here is another sheet for all of the information that would be relevant to this. The case itself is pretty rigid, has a nice little carry strap and a single opening zipper. Opening up inside, we have a USB charging cable, as well as our owner's manual and a warranty card. It has all the useful information that would be required to use this thing to its maximum efficiency. And inside, it also includes a little deployable tripod and the unit itself, as well as an Allen key to make some minor adjustments to this screw. Focusing on the unit itself, these are made in China. We do have a brass 1/4 standard threaded hole on the bottom for mounting our fairly standard threaded deployable tripod. We have buttons on both the top and the right hand side. The Garmin only has them on the top. As far as weight goes, without the tripod, it comes in at a svelte 4.44 ounces, and with the tripod, just about 9 ounces. And well, because it's in the title of the video, I have the Garmin Xero, which comes in at a very lightweight 3.7 ounces, and with the tripod, 5.64 ounces. Now, I was going to make this video just about the Athlon, but a good friend of mine let me borrow his Garmin Xero for your viewing pleasure. And why not put these two head to head? Because clearly these two are pretty similarly modeled after one another. And I wanted to see what a $400 chrono would do against a $600 chrono. Now, yes, that is a pretty substantial price savings, but is the performance going to vary between these two? We've already taken a look at the Athlon for the general overall exterior, with the exception of the buttons, which feel pretty good. I like that these buttons are on the side if you're doing two-hand manipulation, because it's easier than doing this and getting lost with what everything is. We have power, optional, okay, up and down. As for the Garmin, this is made in Taiwan as opposed to China. That's part of the reason why I reckon this is a little bit more expensive than the Athlon. The overall case feels a little bit heavier duty, despite the fact that it is lighter. We have a USB-C charging port on the left-hand side, and all of the buttons are on top, but it's very simply laid out. Okay, back, or power, up and down. The nice thing about this is, if you're trying to do single-hand manipulation on it, let's say it's all the way out by the muzzle of your gun and you're on a table, you can adjust your settings without having to try to come in on the side. So pros and cons for both. As far as the overall side profile, the Garmin is smaller and lighter, and it does have a slight tilt to the screen. The tripods themselves are also very similar but very different at the same time. The Athlon is made out of metal. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of just cast aluminum. It doesn't feel very flimsy or cheap. It actually feels quite good, and it has a fairly good substantial feel about it. You can see I'm putting pretty good pressure on it. It's holding itself fairly stable. The Garmin, on the other hand, is made out of plastic. This is also made in Taiwan, as you can see right there. But this is still very rigid and well controlled. Both of these feel quite good. The Garmin sort of snaps into place when you stow it, whereas the Athlon, you sort of just have to press everything together to have it line up. Given the $200 price delta, I'm fine with either of these. I think I might prefer the Garmin's only because it is that little bit lighter, and if you plan on carrying it in as part of your kit, this is going to weigh a lot less than this. This is how they look on their respective tripods. Deploying the Athlon and deploying the Garmin. The Garmin's a little bit faster and easier to deploy. I mean, they're both stable enough. Now, before we get into the performance of both of these, let's turn them both on and give them a quick menu check, see what is different. Athlon claims 4 to 10 inches. The Garmin is 5 to 15 inches between muzzle, whether it's on a pistol or a rifle or a long gun. Press OK to continue. Okay. So both of these have fairly similar looking menus. Quick start session, new session, history, settings, new session, previous sessions, settings. So a couple more with the Athlon. Let's scroll through this. The screen on this illuminates fairly nicely. We only have those 4 options to speak of. With the Garmin, we only have those 3, and I like how it cycles through the menu like that, whereas the Athlon does not. Pet peeve, nothing negative about that. So we're going to start with rifle and rifle. Both of them have a low and a high FPS setting. Let's just, for bells and whistles, go to the higher setting. Now the Garmin tells you exactly where it needs to be from the muzzle, and the Athlon is already ready to go. So we'll hit OK for the Garmin, and we'll see what sort of information comes on both these screens regularly. So rifle FPS, KE, minimum velocity, shots fired, and maximum velocity. Basically the same with the Garmin, and it's got a shot counter on top. Both of them have battery displays in their top corners. Both these screens are actually quite different from one another. I still actually have the lens protector on the Athlon, so let's pull that off. You could see the Garmin is much flatter, whereas the Athlon is very shiny. That could play dividends for you and your choice. As far as both of these, if they pick up any movement, well, the Athlon picked up movement, and there, the Garmin picked up movement. It will hold everything until it has picked up that it's not moving anymore. So if you were to have either of these on the table and then move them for a different shot, they might tell you, look at that, movement has been detected, and that is completely normal. Let me go through all of the submenus real quick on the Garmin and session, okay. So let's just go back to new session, where they have rifle, pistol, bow, air rifle, and other. Let's go down to air rifle. Same thing. Same thing. We're going to use the power or return button to go back. We're going to scroll through this. Let's go back to quick search setting, quick start session. We're going to OK that. Pistol, archery, air gun, other. Let's go back to air gun. And basically the exact same thing. So with that, let's put these two next to some guns and see how well they record. Before we get to the range, I really wanted to stress the differences in these screens. I had these two side by side for a little bit over 2 weeks, and I have to say I love the flat toned screen of the Garmin. It does not pick up any glare. You could see it at any angle. The Athlon does get much brighter, especially when it's giving you information like that. It will increase the brightness and you could see it very easily. But if there's any sort of glare from ambient light that's hitting off that screen, you are not going to see anything. My first range outing with this was at Large Bore, and I decided to test it out with my 16-inch CZ457 and 22LR, shooting standard velocity ammunition. Should be like around the 800 to 900-ish mark, give or take, and I figured this would be a good starting point, being a low velocity, small caliber bullet. Little did I know that I was about to come across one of this thing's biggest weaknesses. If you do not have this as perpendicular to your target next to your barrel as possible, it will not pick up any shots. I set off 2 rounds, it didn't even flinch. So what I do now is go back through the menu, set it to other instead of rifle, and change it to the rough FPS that it should be. Unfortunately, it still does the exact same thing. And this is part of a twofold problem that I quickly discovered with this. I shouldn't say quickly, it took me a while to really figure it out. Number 1, it really needs to be perpendicular to your target. And number 2, it's best to get it in position before you turn it on and set it up. If you do those 2 things initially, you will have no problems. To hopefully have you understand this better, I got my rifle in position, then set up the chrono to the left of that, turned it on, and then set it up for what I was trying to accomplish. So just like earlier, I'm going to go through all the same submenus, put it in the low FPS mode, which it should more than easily be in that range, leave it alone, and send some rounds downrange. After doing this, as soon as I break the shot, it immediately starts analyzing and spits out a number rather quickly. I shoot this bolt action as fast as I can just to see if it could pick up all the individual shots, and it does so flawlessly. Counteract that with what I was just trying, where I had the
chrono in the exact same settings, in the exact same location, just not pointed perpendicular towards the target and not setting it and starting it in the position that it needed to be in. So that is the biggest thing that you have to keep in mind with this. I do test the Garmin momentarily, and I will say that I didn't really notice any of those issues. The Garmin seemed to be much more consistent whenever you picked it up and set it and put it somewhere else. The Garmin's always seemed to work. I say Garmin's because I actually was fortunate enough to test out 2 of them on the same day along with this Rangecraft. My original plans for this video was simple. Film myself in real time talking about using both the Garmin Xero and the Athlon Rangecraft at the range, starting with my 6.5 Grendel. This is actually the first video that I tried filming with both of these chronos at the same time, and this is when I started running into the problems with the Athlon. The Garmin never missed a shot. No matter where it was, left side, right side, close to the muzzle, far away from the muzzle, it didn't matter what rifle I was shooting, what caliber, the Garmin always seemed to work. But there's another thing that I think does lend itself to the performance of the Garmin being better than the Athlon. The Garmin has probably a few thousand rounds that had gone off next to it from my friend, whereas the Athlon was fresh out of the box factory with 0. I think these do learn a little bit here and there, and the more you use them, the better they're going to perform, especially when you figure out their nuances. I couldn't find any nuances with the Garmin. With the Athlon, I found out a few, but once I figured out the kinks and the quirks, it was bulletproof reliable. I will bring in some of the onboard audio so this way you can understand the differences in velocities between the two, because there were some minor deviations. At the lowest, they were about the same, maybe a tenth or 2 of an FPS off. At the high side, it was anywhere between 25 and 30 FPS, which is a lot if you're doing really precision stuff at great distances. But for the vast majority of people out there, when you're shooting a near 3,000 FPS rifle and there's only about a 30 FPS difference, you're only talking about 1%. Is that going to be enough to sway you one way versus the other? I can't say for sure. What I can say, however, is that the 2 Garmins were very close to one another. And I'll let the onboard audio from the video play so you could really get a better sense for that.
Good solid shot. Both of those are reading identical. 2521.3, 2521.2. This Garmin has been used by my friend a lot, so maybe it's just calibrated itself over time, whereas the Athlon is slowly starting to get worked in. 2506 for the Athlon, 2496 for the Garmin. So again, about a 10 FPS difference. 5 rounds. The first one didn't read with the Athlon. All of them were read by the Garmin. I'm now going to swap these over and see if there's any noticeable difference. The Athlon has been consistently faster than the Garmin. So by swapping them, maybe there'll be some sort of difference between the two. Maybe it could be the 6x6 post that's reverberating back. I don't know. But there's only one way to find out. All right, I swapped them over. The Athlon's now on the right. The Garmin's now on the left. I should have mentioned I'm shooting Hornady Black 123 grain tail hollow points. Yes, 6.5 Grendel, obviously, like I said. 5 rounds loaded up again. Let's see how this performs. Garmin is reading at 2479. The Athlon 2506. I don't know if the Athlon picked that shot up. I think that was the same number as my previous round, so maybe it just didn't read. 2503 for the Garmin, and the Athlon is still reading 2506. So let me hit OK on it. Doesn't seem to really be doing anything. Let's finish out this magazine. 2471 for the Garmin. The Athlon still is not registering that any shots. I'm not going to waste ammo. Got 2 rounds left. The Garmin is reading 8 shots, which is the exact amount of shots that I just put down range. The Athlon's only reading 4 shots. It did happen when I swapped them over. What I'm going to do now is reset the Athlon to see if it's going to work for the last 2 shots. All right, I restarted the Athlon rifle, high velocity, 0 across the board. I got 2 rounds left in the magazine. Let's see if this will pick them up. Good solid hit. Garmin counted that, 2486.4, shot 9. The Athlon did not read. Not ideal. I'm actually going to move it closer to the muzzle. Maybe that'll help pick it up. And I'm going to move the Garmin farther away, just for curiosity's sake. So the Athlon picked that one up, 2502. The Garmin did not. So maybe the Athlon favors being a little bit closer to the muzzle. It does say 4 to 10 inches away. I had it about 8. Now I have it about 5 or so. I'm going to load up this magazine with 3 more rounds and just see how it does. All right. As you can see, both of them are now much closer to the muzzle. And I'm going to see if they can both now register. Make sure the Garmin doesn't fall off under recoil. Let's get on target and both of them picked it up. 2467 for the Garmin, 2476 for the Athlon. So at least they both picked that up. Good solid hit. Garmin read that as 2498. The Athlon 2503. So the Athlon's still consistently faster by about 5 to 10 FPS. Which one is actually more accurate? I don't really have a good baseline between these two. But another friend of mine has another Garmin. I might go borrow that soon to put the Garmin's head-to-head. Good solid shot. Both picked up that shot. The Garmin 2486, the Athlon 2485, within an FPS of one another. Boy, am I lucky. 2 Garmin Xeros and 1 Athlon. Let's see how they perform. Real quick, though. The second Garmin wasn't turning on. It was showing dead. So I plug it in real quick, and it says, oh, 70% battery life. Okay, I unplug it, turn it on, 70% battery life, and it's still showing plenty of battery life. Who knows? If that's an issue you've had, let me know in the comment section below. All right, 3 rounds loaded up. Garmin's are about equidistant to one another. And I just moved the Athlon over to see if that's even going to read from over there. Let's get on the steel. Just nick the top of it. Garmin number 1, which is the original, 2488.1. Garmin number 2, 2488.7. As far as the Athlon, that did pick it up at 2485.2. So it's actually a little bit slower than the Garmin's by only about 2 FPS. Not half bad. Garmin number 1, 2489.0. Garmin number 2, 2489.7. Again, 0.6, of an FPS difference between the 2 Garmin's. The Athlon did not pick that one up. So I'm going to, again, move it closer to the muzzle for the last shot. A bit of a wild difference between the Garmin's on that one. The one on the left, 2469.7. One on the right, 2489.7. And the Athlon did not pick that one up again. So I am going to put this gun away because I've shot 16 rounds of 6.5 Grendel. I'm going to pull out a 5.56 and see how that does with varying different types of ammunition. From the Gen 2 Ruger American to the Gen 1 Ruger American. This is in 5.56, and I have 10 rounds loaded up with varying different types of ammunition. Everything from green tips to steel case to I don't even know. So it'll be interesting to see how these two compare against one another. I'm going to maintain the Garmin being on the left and the Athlon being on the right for the first few shots, and then I'm going to switch them around because I felt the Athlon was way more consistent on the left, and the Garmin's really been much more consistent no matter what. Both of them, however, are much closer to the muzzle on this, so hopefully we'll be getting a more consistent result. 2742 on the Garmin, 2739 on the Athlon. So about 3 FPS off. Much better.
2721 and 2726. Again, much better. 2882, 2882, the same. I got 10 rounds, so I'll do 2 more and then swap them over. 2746, 2745, much better. 2821, 2815. All right, that was 5 rounds. I want to swap them and see how they do. They have been swapped around, so let's see what happens now. 2759, 2765, so within 6 FPS. 2896, 2895, awesome. 2907, 2902, 2892, 2894. All right, this was a huge success. I'm not even going to bother shooting this gun anymore. Both of them at the exact same distance from one another, also from the muzzle. Both of them are reading really, really close, well below 10 FPS. I don't know if maybe I was just still too far away from the muzzle of my 6.5 Grendel. I might pull that back out just to see if I can have more consistent results like this. But this was so close together that I really wouldn't say there's much of a difference at all.
I finished out that cold, rainy range day feeling quite successful and quite proud of myself. I was able to get the Garmin and the Athlon to read very close to one another and very consistently towards the end. I revisit the range a couple of weeks later, take out the Rangecraft one more time on my 6.5 Grendel, and taking the knowledge that I had learned or had problem solved, I set everything up the way I had told you earlier, and as you could see, I had fantastic results. Of the short string of rounds that I fired here, it didn't miss a single one, and it's very, very fast to give you a readout. It is much faster than the Garmin, so if you are really keen to getting as much information as quickly as possible, the Athlon is going to give you the information much faster. My friend was also there that lent me his Garmin Xero. He was shooting his 300 PRC Barrett MRAD. Yeah, he's a man that has very exquisite taste. I figured, let me set this Rangecraft up and see how it would fare with such a large, fast-moving bullet, and as you could guess, it picks it up no problems whatsoever. Because both of these chronos are able to read at very low FPSs, I wanted to see how it would fare against an airsoft gun. This is a Tokyo Marui, simple, basic bolt action. Rated for around 300 FPS. I think I'm shooting 0.3 gram BBs out of it. Nevertheless, I wanted to see what would happen. To make a very long story short, the Garmin read everything flawlessly. Both the Garmin and the Athlon were in airgun mode, but the Athlon refused to read or even analyze the shots at all. It was actually extremely frustrating for me because I couldn't figure out why. And then it hit me. Let me email Athlon and see what they say. They were very fast to respond. In fact, they gave me a call and said, hey, why don't you try other mode as opposed to airgun mode and set it for the lowest FPS rating. As soon as I did that, it picked up everything flawlessly. And to give you an idea of what it looks like, here is a raw video proving it. The only thing I could think of with why it's not picking up the 6mm gram BBs in airgun mode in the Garmin is the resolution of the sensor. So it's basically just throwing out a bunch of little dots out there, and it's picking up where the dots get reflected back. And the 6mm BBs are very soft plastic compared to a hard lead pellet, let's say. But that's the only thing that makes sense in my mind. If you know this going forward, you shouldn't have any issues. Got to keep in mind that this is also designed for pistol use. So my first day at the range, I set both of these up for pistol mode. I'm shooting my 4-inch CZP-10C using some 124 grain ball ammunition, and I'll let you listen to the onboard audio.
I'm shooting CCI 124 grain, so we'll see how this works. Gonna keep them about there. Gonna aim at that steel plate, which I know I'm not gonna hit. 978 for the Garmin, 985 for the Athlon. $991 versus 1001. $999, $999. $990 and $991. So they're very, very close to one another now. $978, $987. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna swap them around again. 1001 to 990. $998, $993. 1002 to 993. 992, 985. 984, 979. So both of them read all 10 shots, which is great. Average between the two, definitely, again, the Athlon's reading about 10 FPS higher on average. Sometimes it gets within 1 or 2 FPS, but usually it's consistently higher between 5 to 10 FPS, just like we saw with the other two rifles. As far as how I like operating the buttons out here in the field, I feel the Garmin is a little bit easier to just circumnavigate. You only have 4 buttons on top versus the Athlon with 3 buttons on top and 2 on the side to go up and down. The buttons are a little more intuitive as far as that goes, but I think it's just a little bit easier to go through all the submenus on the Garmin. But again, that's going to be personal preference. But out here in these very miserable conditions, they both worked quite well. After I realized that the Athlon has to be much closer to the muzzle than the Garmin, it started working just fine. And I would say it definitely kept pace with the Garmin, but the Garmin's been a little bit more consistent, especially between the two Garmins. And I'm really happy I was able to test that because it shows that the Garmins are at least calibrated really close to one another.
I did one other round of pistol shooting, again with my CZP-10C with varying types of ammunition. This is 115 grain, regular ball 9mm, running a little bit hotter. And I also have it down on the bench about 2 feet away from the muzzle. I'm about 2 feet higher up and about a foot or so to the left. And it picked up every single one of my shots. I was out there shooting with a buddy, and when I wasn't shooting, and he was about 3 to 4 feet farther left than I was, so 4 to 5 feet away from the Athlon, it picked up all of his shots as well. Once I figure out the nuances with this Athlon Rangecraft, it has been absolutely bulletproof reliable. The only few things that I could really say to sum this up is give you a couple of pointers. Number 1, if you are going to leave this in its bag for an extended period of time, several weeks, let's say, and you're going to take it to the range, be smart and be proactive. Pull it out of the case and make sure it's fully charged. There were 2 times where I took it to the range on different occasions, and it had been sitting for about a week or so, and the battery was almost fully drained. I don't know if it was giving me a false higher reading on the battery when I had finished using it the previous time and let it sit for a while, or what, but I can say that it doesn't last that long. So definitely make sure you have a full charge up every time you want to take it to the range. Number 2, absolutely make sure it is as perpendicular to your target as possible. If you're going to be shooting from directly above it, square it up to yourself and it should be fine. As far as location to the muzzle, I did find that with the rifle, it started to pick up the rifle better during its initial testing, the closer it was to the muzzle. But now I can have it a foot or so away minimum, and it doesn't have any issues. I should also note, because I didn't mention it earlier, that I did test the Athlon and the Garmin individually by themselves, one on the table next to the gun, the other one off on a different table, just to make sure that they weren't interfering with one another. I had the exact same experiences as I did with my initial setup, because again, I wasn't smart enough to set the Athlon up perpendicular, turn it on, and run it through its submenu to make sure I got it in the correct mode while it was still on the table. I did run into some interference issues. Again, if I was to pick it up and move it while it was still running and recording, it would tell me, hey, stop moving me, put me back down. I would do so, and it might give me some issues. The Garmin did the exact same thing, but that didn't give me any issues whatsoever. I've already mentioned it before, but I do prefer the layout of the Athlon if I'm double-handing it. I do prefer the layout of the Garmin if I'm single-handing it, if it's in position at the end of the table next to a muzzle, because all you have to do is press down, whereas with the Athlon you have to push down and then side to side, which means you have to use two hands to use it effectively no matter what, whereas with the Garmin you really can get away with using it with just one finger at any position. And the screens, the Athlon isn't bad, but the Garmin is just a little bit better. However, I will say that if you're shooting in very dark environments or darker environments with a lot of shadows, the Athlon will be a little bit easier because the screen does light up very bright every time it gives you some data. With all that being said, there's not much else I can say. Both the Athlon and the Garmin performed very well to one another. I did find some very consistent information that the Athlon does read a little bit faster than the Garmin, but as you have already seen in the video, between 10 or 15 FPS on average, which really isn't that much of a difference. A huge thank you to Athlon for sending this in for me to review. It's my first chrono. I was actually planning on buying a chrono, and they just sent it at the exact most opportune time. Which one of these would I recommend? I would honestly recommend both of them. If you're on a tighter budget, the Athlon is going to be about $200 less expensive. Currently, as of right now, of me doing this voiceover on October 7th, 2025, EuroOptic has the Athlon for $399, and it has the Garmin for $599. That is a $200 price savings. That's a lot of ammunition, depending on what you're shooting. If you are looking for the best possible device, I do think I favor the Garmin a little bit more. I just really like the button layout. I like the screen. I like its size. I like that it's made in Taiwan and not China. Little things like that. I also like the weight savings. If I'm going to be throwing this in my backpack or my front chest, or you're going to take it hunting with you, ounces equal pounds, and you cannot argue or deny that the Garmin is much lighter than the Athlon. However, if you're on a lower budget, I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend this Athlon. It has been in my range bag ever since I got it. I take it with me everywhere I go because you never know when you're going to need a chrono. And yes, I can say with full confidence that once I figured out the nuances with it, it hasn't given me a single failure to read. So take that for what it's worth. Again, a huge thank you for Athlon for sending this in. No, I'm not going to say it's a good product just because they did that. They're aware of that, and I want you all to be aware of that as well. But the big thank you goes to all of you at home for staying tuned and watching as long as you have. It's because of you that I can still make these videos. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. And as always, I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.